There are things that happen inside airports that never appear in any incident report. Not because no one filed one. Because the people who should have filed them sat down at their desks afterward, stared at the blank form, and couldn't find a single field that applied. A gate agent at Philadelphia International processed a boarding pass at 11:47 p.m. and didn't notice until the passenger had already walked through that the name on the pass matched a death certificate filed 16 years ago. A woman at Seattle-Tacoma pressed play on a voicemail she didn't remember receiving, recorded at 34,000 feet, during a flight she was actively on, and heard a voice that belonged to no one in her contacts describe, in precise detail, exactly what she had been doing at the moment of the recording. And then there is the last one. The one I want you to understand going in before we reach it, so that when we get there you'll know why the man at the center of it has never spoken about it publicly. Not once. Not to his wife. Not to anyone who shares his last name. He woke up mid-flight. Everyone else in the cabin was asleep. And the man across the aisle had been waiting for him to open his eyes. These are 6 accounts, 6 airports, 6 flights that landed without incident, according to every official record that exists. What the records don't include is everything else. The last person Elena expected to see at LAX at 3:17 in the morning was a child. She was 41, a logistics coordinator who made the Los Angeles to Boston run 4 times a year, and she had been stranded at Terminal 6 for going on 6 hours following a mechanical delay that the airline's representatives had stopped pretending to be apologetic about somewhere around midnight. The terminal had emptied incrementally, the way a beach empties when the weather changes, one person at a time, until suddenly you look up and realize you're alone. Which she was. Almost. She noticed the girl because of the stillness. In Elena's experience, children in airports are never still. Even sleeping children shift and murmur and pull their knees up. This girl was standing in the corridor that connected Terminal 6 to the international gates, standing in the center of it, approximately 60 feet from Elena's seat, facing the far end of the corridor. Small. Dark hair. A white dress that was wrong for the season and wrong for the temperature, because the terminal's climate control after midnight runs aggressive, and Elena had been wearing her jacket since 11 p.m. The girl was not wearing a jacket. She was not moving. Elena looked around the gate for a parent. Not systematically, just the instinctive scan of someone who has noticed an unattended child and expects the responsible adult to materialize within seconds. No one materialized. The gate held perhaps 8 other delayed passengers, most of them horizontal across rows of seats, jackets over faces, entirely unconscious. No one was watching the corridor. No one was watching the girl. Elena looked back at her. She was still facing away. Still completely motionless. The corridor behind her was fully lit. LAX does not dim for the hour, and the light fell on her evenly, and she cast a shadow forward that was sharp and still. Elena told herself the child had wandered from a sleeping parent. She told herself she would watch for 30 seconds and if no adult appeared, she would go check on her. She counted the 30 seconds. No adult appeared. She stood and walked toward the corridor. The sound of her own footsteps was strange to her, too clear, too present in the ambient silence. Somewhere in the terminal behind her, a floor cleaning machine hummed in a distant concourse. Otherwise nothing. She walked the 60 feet and she stopped 6 feet behind the girl and she said, in the careful, non-alarming tone of an adult who does not want to startle a child, "Hey, sweetheart. Are you lost?" The girl did not respond. Elena moved around her, slowly, keeping her distance, positioning herself where she could see the child's face without startling her from behind. The girl was staring at the far end of the corridor, at the point where it bent left and disappeared toward the international departure level. Her eyes were open. Her expression was neutral, not frightened, not distressed, not the expression of a lost child who knows they are lost. Neutral in the manner of someone watching something that Elena, standing directly beside her, could not see. "Honey," Elena said, softer this time. "Where's your mom?" The girl blinked. "What?" Slowly. Then she turned her head and looked directly at Elena, and Elena felt the specific, unreasonable cold that moves through a person when something presents itself as ordinary and is not ordinary, and she could not have explained in that moment or in any moment since what it was about the girl's eyes that produced that cold. They were a child's eyes. Brown. Normal. But they were looking at Elena the way she had sometimes caught her cat looking at something above her shoulder, not at her, precisely. At something located in her general vicinity. "She's already at the gate," the girl said. "Who is?" Elena asked. The girl looked back at the far end of the corridor. "My mom." Elena looked. The corridor was empty. The bend at its far end was visible from where she stood, a clean 90-degree turn under full fluorescent light, and there was no one in it. No adult. No one waiting. "I don't see anyone at the gate," Elena said. The girl said nothing. She was looking at the bend in the corridor again, with that same directed attention, the attention of someone tracking movement. Elena took out her phone. She was going to call airport security, not out of panic, out of reasonable concern, because there was a child alone in a terminal at 3 a.m. and that was reason enough without anything else. She unlocked her screen. When she looked up, the corridor was empty. Not empty with the girl walking away from her. She had looked down for 3 seconds, perhaps 4, and in that interval the corridor had gone from containing one small, white-dressed child to containing nothing. The corridor was 40 feet wide and lit end to end, and there was nowhere to go in 4 seconds. No door. No alcove. No branch. Just the straight corridor and the bend at its end and the flat, empty light of an airport that never turned off. Elena walked to the bend and looked around it. Empty. She walked the second corridor that extended from it, to the international departure level door. Locked. Badge access only with a keypad. She tried the handle. It didn't move. She walked back to her gate and she sat down, and she did not sleep for the remaining 2 hours of her wait. When she boarded at 5:45 a.m. and finally 15 minutes into the flight, closed her eyes, she thought about what the girl had said. She's already at the gate. Present tense. Not she's waiting or she went ahead. Already there. As if the mother's position at the gate were an established fact rather than a direction. She asked the airline when she landed in Boston whether any families with young children had been on her flight. The gate agent checked and told her the flight had had 3 children under 12 on the manifest. All 3 had boarded with parents. All 3 had been accounted for at boarding. None of them had been traveling alone. Elena has flown through LAX 11 times since. She has never walked through Terminal SIX's International Corridor after midnight. She says it's not the disappearance that stays with her. It's that the girl answered her question. She's already at the gate. And that when Elena looked, when she walked the full corridor and checked the locked departure door and came back, she found herself wondering not where the girl had gone, but whether the mother she'd referenced had ever been the kind that Elena was looking for. What follows happened in broad daylight, which I tell you now before you hear it because I want you to understand that darkness is not a prerequisite. Sometimes all it requires is a gate, a boarding pass, and a moment of eye contact that produces a feeling you will spend years trying to classify. James was 44 years old, a high school history teacher from Columbus who flew twice a year. Once for a conference in the spring, once for Thanksgiving with his brother in Denver. He was not a nervous flyer. He was not a nervous anything particularly. He was the kind of man who graded papers on planes and fell asleep during turbulence and had never given airports more consideration than the time required to navigate them. He was at Columbus John Glenn International on a Thursday afternoon in April, 2:30 p.m. departure to Denver, gate fully occupied, boarding in 20 minutes. He had his boarding pass on his phone. He had a book he'd been meaning to read for a year. He was entirely, thoroughly unprepared for what happened when he stepped up to the gate desk to ask about the overhead bin situation on a full flight. The gate agent was a woman in her mid-50s. Airline uniform, the specific shade of navy that most major carriers use, name badge he didn't catch. She smiled professionally when he approached. She asked for his boarding pass. He held up his phone. She scanned it. The scanner beeped. She looked at the screen. And her expression changed. Not dramatically. Not the visible alarm of someone confronting a serious problem. A smaller thing. A flicker, a fraction of a second where something moved behind her professional composure like a shape moving behind frosted glass. She looked at the screen. She looked at his boarding pass on his phone. She looked at him. "Can I see some ID?" she asked. Her voice was exactly what a gate agent's voice should be. Smooth. Professionally pleasant. He gave her his driver's license. She looked at it for longer than a license normally requires. She looked at her screen again. "Mr. Callahan," she said. "This boarding pass shows a previous scan." James stared at her. "I'm sorry?" "This pass was scanned 40 minutes ago," she said. "At this gate." He had been sitting at this gate for 40 minutes. In his seat. Reading the first 3 pages of his book repeatedly because he kept losing the thread. He had not approached the gate desk. He had not spoken to a gate agent. He had not had his boarding pass scanned. "That's not possible," he said. "I've been sitting right over there." She looked at him. She looked at the screen. She picked up her desk phone and had a brief, quiet conversation with someone he couldn't hear clearly. She hung up. She typed something. She looked at him again. "I'm going to issue you a new boarding pass," she said. "The system occasionally duplicates scan records. It's a known issue." She said this last part with the careful neutrality of a sentence that has been prepared in advance for situations that require an explanation without providing one. She printed a new pass. She handed it to him. She smiled. James took the pass. He started to turn. Then he stopped. He stopped because the terminal's floor-to-ceiling windows ran the full length of the gate behind the desk, and those windows faced the tarmac, and they were reflective enough in the afternoon light that they functioned, from James's angle, as a partial mirror. He could see himself in them. He could see the desk. He could see the monitor, the scanner, the desk phone, the stack of printed gate documents. He could not see the gate agent. Not a degraded reflection. Not a dim one. The window reflected everything at the desk with reasonable clarity, the monitor's glow, the scanner's green light, the documents. But where the gate agent stood, directly behind the desk, there was nothing. The reflection showed an empty desk. An unoccupied space. James turned around slowly. She was standing there. Exactly where she had been. Looking at him with the professional pleasantness of someone waiting for a passenger to finish his transaction and move on. He looked at the window. Empty desk. He looked at her. Present. He looked at the window. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" she asked. He said no. He walked back to his seat. He sat down. He looked at the gate desk from his seat and he watched the gate agent move through her ordinary tasks. Processing boarding passes, answering questions, making announcements, and he looked at the windows behind her, and the windows showed him the desk and the scanner and the monitor and the empty space where a person was visibly standing. He boarded when his zone was called. He did not go back to the desk. He found his seat and he put his book in the seat back pocket and he did not open it again. He told me that the thing he kept returning to afterward was not the reflection. It was the boarding pass. The previous scan. The fact that 40 minutes before he approached that desk, something had presented his boarding pass at that gate. Something that had apparently already boarded. Married couples who travel together develop a particular rhythm. A wordless choreography of who carries what, who checks the time, who remembers the gate number, who gets the window seat because the other one doesn't care. Sarah and Tom had been married for 9 years and had this rhythm completely. They moved through airports the way long-practiced partners move through anything. Efficiently, without discussion, each one covering what the other forgets. They were flying home to Portland from a long weekend in Nashville, a celebration of their anniversary that had been rescheduled twice and had finally happened and had been, by both accounts, exactly what they needed. They boarded their Sunday evening flight relaxed and unhurried. They took their seats, Sarah at the window, Tom on the aisle. They watched Nashville fall away beneath them. Sarah fell asleep somewhere over Arkansas. Tom watched a documentary on his laptop with his headphones in. The flight was completely ordinary in every way that a flight can be ordinary. They landed at 10:40 p.m. They collected their bag. They walked to short-term parking and found their car and drove home through light Sunday traffic and were in bed by midnight. The following Tuesday, Sarah was clearing old notifications off her phone when she found the voicemail. She didn't recognize the number. A long string of digits that didn't correspond to any geographic area code she knew. The timestamp showed it had been recorded at 9:22 p.m. on Sunday. They'd been at 34,000 feet at 9:22 p.m. on Sunday, somewhere over southern Oregon, 20 minutes from landing. She played it. The recording was 43 seconds long. There was background noise. She recognized it immediately, had been sitting inside it when it was recorded. The specific, pressurized ambient hum of an aircraft cabin at cruising altitude. The thin, recycled quality of pressurized air carrying sound. She had spent 2.5 hours inside that exact acoustic environment and she knew it without question. And then a voice. Not a voice she recognized. Not Tom's, not any member of her family, not any contact in her phone. A voice that was neither clearly male nor clearly female, calm, unhurried, speaking in a register that felt less like a phone call and more like someone narrating something they were watching. She has only repeated the content of it to 2 people. Tom and a close friend who she trusts with the things that don't have reasonable explanations. What it said, in the 43 seconds of that recording, was a description of what she and Tom had been doing at 9:22 p.m. on Sunday evening. Tom on the aisle with his laptop. Sarah at the window, asleep. The specific angle of Sarah's head against the seat. The color of Tom's headphone cable. The row number. The way the cabin lights had been dimmed to their lower setting. All of it accurate. Every specific detail accurate. The voice ended the recording with a sentence that Sarah will not repeat verbatim to anyone. She will say only that it was a question. And that the question was about whether they'd enjoyed the flight. She reported the voicemail to her phone carrier. They told her the originating number was not a registered line. Not a VoIP number, not an international line, not any category of phone number that exists in their system. The number, as far as their records indicated, had never made a call. She deleted the voicemail. She says this was a mistake, not because it would have provided answers, but because without it she is left with the precise content of 43 seconds of audio that she cannot share and cannot forget and cannot reconcile with any category of experience she has a name for. Tom changed their seats on every subsequent booking to the center of the plane. Away from the windows. He does not explain why when people notice the preference. Sarah still doesn't know whose voice it was. She's not sure that question has an answer she wants. The section of Philadelphia International Airport that David found himself in at 11:15 p.m. on a Wednesday does not appear on any map of the facility. He has checked. He has checked the official terminal maps, the construction records available through the Airport Authority's public database, the architectural plans submitted for the most recent expansion. The corridor he walked down, the gate area he entered, the rows of seats he stood among for 11 minutes while he tried to understand where he was. None of it corresponds to any section of Philadelphia International that officially exists. He was 48, a freelance audio engineer flying home to Philly after a mixing session in Chicago that had run long. He'd missed his original flight. The airline had rebooked him on a 11:50 p.m. departure and given him a gate number that placed him in Terminal F, a concourse he'd used before, a straightforward 15-minute walk from security. He followed the signs. This is important because he has gone back over it many times since and he is certain, not almost certain but certain, that he followed the signs exactly. Terminal F, the overhead directional placards posted at every junction, green letters on white backgrounds, the universal airport grammar of arrows and gate numbers that is specifically designed to be impossible to misread. He arrived at a gate area. It took him approximately 90 seconds to understand that something was wrong. The seating configuration was different. Not just different from Terminal F's usual layout, different in the way that suggests a different architect and a different era. The chairs arranged in a pattern that older sections of airports use, bolted in rows that face a specific direction, a style that's been phased out of most major American airports over the past 2 decades. The carpet was a color and pattern he hadn't seen in the rest of the terminal. Darker, more worn, the kind of institutional pattern that belongs to the 80s or early 90s. The departure board above the gate desk was off. Not in sleep mode. Off. No glow, no standby indicator, the screen dark and slightly dusty in a way that implied it had not been used recently. There was no gate agent. And there were people in the seats. Not many, 8, perhaps 10, scattered across the rows in the isolated way of late-night passengers who have settled in for a long wait. They had luggage. They had bags at their feet and jackets folded on their laps, and in one case a paper coffee cup that the man holding it appeared to be reading as much as drinking from. They looked completely, utterly normal. Not one of them looked up when David entered. He stood at the entrance to the gate area and turned around and looked at the corridor he'd come down. It was the right corridor. He could see the junction at its far end, the directional signage, the correct path back to the main terminal spine. He had not turned wrong. He had not passed through a door he shouldn't have. He turned back to the gate. "Excuse me," he said. To the room, to no one specific. "Is this Terminal F? I'm looking for gate F29. No one looked up. He said it again, slightly louder. Nothing. He walked toward the nearest seated passenger, a middle-aged man in a gray windbreaker with a duffel bag at his feet, looking at nothing in particular, and he stopped directly in front of him and said at normal conversational volume, "I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you tell me where gate F29 is?" The man did not respond, did not look up. His eyes were open. He was not asleep. He was simply not responding. The way a person doesn't respond when the input isn't registering. When they are present in a location but not present in whatever sense makes input and output connect. David stood there for 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked back up the corridor he'd come from, quickly but not running, and at the junction he turned right and followed the signs for Terminal F and arrived at gate F29 4 minutes later. The gate agent scanned his boarding pass without incident. He took a seat. His flight departed on time. He went home. He spent the following 2 weeks trying to determine, through every publicly available source, whether there was any section of Philadelphia International that matched what he had described. He contacted the airport authority. They told him Terminal F was fully mapped and accounted for and that there were no decommissioned or mothballed gate areas accessible to the public. He asked whether there had ever been such an area. There was a long pause on the call. Then the representative told him that any historical facility changes would be a matter of public record and he was welcome to submit a records request. He submitted the request. He received, 6 weeks later, a packet of architectural documents covering Terminal F's development from 1985 to present. He went through every page. One page was redacted entirely. A single full page, blacked out, in the middle of a section covering gate area assignments from 1987 to 1993. He requested the unredacted version. He was told the page was withheld under the facility's internal operational security protocols. He has never found out what was on it. He has never been able to identify any of the people sitting in that gate. And he has never figured out why none of them moved. Claire had been a flight attendant for 14 years, and she had a rule that most of the people she worked with shared without articulating. On a red eye, you don't look too closely at the passengers. Not out of indifference, out of self-preservation. The particular demographics of a 1 a.m. flight, the sleepless, the grieving, the exhausted, the people for whom this is the last affordable option, require a cultivated professional distance if you intend to maintain your function. You do your service passes. You answer call buttons. You don't study faces. She broke this rule somewhere over the Midwest on a red-eye from JFK to LAX in November, and she has regretted it in the specific way you regret learning something you cannot unlearn. The passenger in 24A caught her attention on the second service pass. Male. Elderly, mid-70s she estimated. Slight, with white hair and a dark coat and hands folded in his lap, which was in itself unremarkable. What was less unremarkable was that he was in exactly the same position he'd been in on the first service pass. Exactly. Not approximately. She had a flight attendant's peripheral memory for cabin arrangement, the trained ongoing awareness of who is where, what they're doing, whether anyone needs something, and she was certain that in the 40 minutes between the first and second passes, the man in 24A had not moved. She offered him a drink. He didn't respond. She said, "Excuse me." She said, "Sir." She leaned slightly across the empty middle seat. His eyes were open. He was not asleep. He was looking at the seat back in front of him with the fixed, settled gaze of someone who has been looking at the same thing for a long time and intends to continue. She returned to the galley. She checked the manifest. The name on 24A's booking was Arthur Henley. She typed it into the airline's passenger record system. The full name plus the flight number. As part of a routine inquiry she could not have fully explained in that moment beyond an instinct that 14 years of overnight flights had made reliable. The system returned a record. Arthur Henley, 74, had flown this route, JFK to LAX, the overnight, on a Tuesday in March 17 years ago. He had been listed as a passenger on that flight's manifest. He had not been alive when the plane landed. He'd had a cardiac event somewhere over Colorado. The flight had continued, diversion wasn't deemed actionable in time, and he'd been pronounced on the ground at LAX by emergency personnel who met the plane at the gate. He had died in seat 24A. Claire stood in the galley for a long moment with the tablet in her hands. Then she walked back down the aisle. She stopped at row 24. The seat was empty. The middle and window seats in the row were occupied by a young woman and her teenage son, both asleep against each other. The aisle seat, 24A, was empty, the tray table in its upright position, the seat back pocket undisturbed. She checked with the purser. The boarding count was correct. Every seat on the manifest had been filled at gate closure. 24A showed as occupied. The passenger's name was Arthur Henley. The purser looked at the seat. Looked at Claire. "Full flight," she said carefully. "Probably just sat somewhere else." They didn't find him in any other seat. They checked the lavatories. They did a quiet, methodical walk of the entire cabin. They found nothing. The plane landed at LAX at 5:40 a.m. Passengers disembarked. Ground crew came aboard. One of the ground crew found her in the galley and held up something he'd found in the seat back pocket of 24A. A boarding pass. Printed, not digital. The old thermal print format the airline had used until approximately 12 years ago. Name, Arthur Henley. Flight number matching the route from 17 years ago. Seat 24A. The date on the boarding pass was the date of his death. Claire took the boarding pass. She kept it. She doesn't know why. She keeps it in a small zippered pouch in her work bag, and she has never worked a red-eye JFK to LAX since without spending a portion of the flight aware of seat 24A in a way she cannot turn off. She has asked 3 colleagues who were working the cabin that night whether they noticed anything in row 24. All 3 said no. One of them asked her not to bring it up again. The thing about what happened to Kevin on that flight is that he is not a person who frightens easily, and he will tell you this himself, and you will believe him because the people who say it and don't mean it always sound different from the people who say it and do. He was 35. A former Army logistics officer, 8 years of service, 2 overseas deployments. Currently a project manager for a construction firm in Seattle. He was flying back from a job site visit in Dallas. A Tuesday night, 10:55 p.m. departure. A flight he'd booked at the last minute when the site visit ran long. He boarded tired, took his aisle seat in row 18, noted that the window seat was occupied by a woman already asleep against a travel pillow, noted that the middle seat between them was empty. He put his bag overhead. He sat down. He was asleep before they reached cruising altitude. He woke up at 1:17 a.m. according to his phone. He knew immediately that something was wrong. Not from anything visible. From the quality of the silence. He had spent enough time in enough high-consequence environments to have developed a relationship with silence that most people don't. The understanding that silence has textures, that the silence of a safe room and the silence of an unsafe one are physically different in ways the body registers before the mind does. He opened his eyes and the cabin was dark and the passengers were asleep and the plane was at cruising altitude and everything looked exactly as it should. The silence was wrong. He sat with it for a moment. He looked at the woman in the window seat, still asleep in the same position. He looked at the rows ahead of him, the dim blue dark of the cabin, the occasional shape of a sleeping head. He looked across the aisle. The man in the aisle seat of row 18 across from him was awake. Awake and looking directly at him. Had been looking at him. Kevin had the immediate, involuntary understanding of someone with trained situational awareness that this man had been watching him for some time before he opened his eyes. Not with aggression. Not with anything Kevin could have articulated as threatening. With attention. The absolute, focused, unblinking attention of someone waiting for a specific thing to happen. "You weren't supposed to wake up," the man said. His voice was quiet, conversational. Not a whisper, a normal speaking volume, which in the silent cabin was more disturbing than a whisper would have been, because a whisper acknowledges the need for concealment and this did not. Kevin looked at him. He was mid-50s, Kevin estimated. Ordinary looking. The face of a man you would not remember after passing him on a street. He had no drink, no book, no phone. His hands were in his lap. He had the posture of someone who had been sitting exactly like this for a long time and intended to continue. "I'm sorry?" Kevin said. "The others are asleep," the man said. He said it the way you state something mutually obvious. "They'll stay that way until we land. They usually do." He looked at Kevin with that same still, precise attention. "You're unusual." Kevin said nothing. He was running the assessment automatically, the occupational habit of a man trained to evaluate environments quickly. The cabin. The exits. The flight attendant station at the forward bulkhead, dark and unoccupied. He could see the back of a flight attendant's head over the top of the seat, not moving. The call button above his seat. He reached up and pressed it. Nothing happened. The button lit orange and stayed lit. No chime. No movement from the forward station. "It won't reach them right now," the man said. "Not smugly. Just informationally. This part of the flight is particular. You'll understand when it's over." He paused. "If you stop trying to interrupt it, it'll be over faster." Kevin looked at him. "Who are you?" The man considered the question with what appeared to be genuine reflection, the way you consider a question that has several possible true answers and you're deciding which one is appropriate for the audience. "I'm between things," he said finally. "Same as this flight. Same as everyone on it, right now at this hour, above this particular piece of the country." He looked forward. "There's a window. Most flights have one. Between when the last person falls asleep and when the first one wakes up. It's a specific time. A specific kind of quiet." He paused. "I find it useful." "Useful for what?" Kevin asked. The man looked at him again. And what Kevin has said in every account he has given of this moment to the two people he has trusted with it, is that the look was not threatening, and was not reassuring, and was not any expression he has a clean name for. It was the look of something that has existed in proximity to humans long enough to find them mildly interesting, the way a person who has lived long enough can find the very young interesting, with a detachment that is not unkind and not kind, and is something older than either. "You should try to go back to sleep," the man said. "I'm not going to do that," Kevin said. The man nodded slowly. "I know," he said. "That's why I said it." He looked forward. He did not speak again. Kevin sat beside him, across the aisle, one row back, separated by the width of an aircraft cabin that felt smaller than it had ever felt, for the next 14 minutes, watching him. The man did not move, did not look at his hands, did not acknowledge Kevin again. At 1:31 a.m., the call button above Kevin's seat chimed. The light went out. From the forward galley, a flight attendant appeared, walking the aisle, the routine of a check. Kevin raised his hand. She came to him. He asked for water. She got it. Came back. He looked across the aisle. The seat was empty. The tray table up. The seat back pocket undisturbed. 2 seats over, a man in a business shirt was asleep with his mouth open, his arm across the middle seat, fully unconscious. Kevin asked the flight attendant if she knew the passenger in the seat across from him. He pointed. She looked at the seat. Looked at him. "That seat's been empty the whole flight," she said. He drank his water. He did not sleep again. When they landed and the cabin lights came up and the people around him began to surface from their sleep, slowly, blinking, the performance of people returning from somewhere, he watched their faces and he could not identify in any of them the specific quality of return. of coming back from wherever sleep had taken them. They just woke up, and they had no memory of anything. He has thought about what the man said. A window. Between when the last person falls asleep and when the first one wakes up. He has thought about it on every flight since, every night departure, every red eye, every moment when he feels the cabin go quiet around him in a way that has a texture he now recognizes. He doesn't sleep on night flights anymore. Not since that Tuesday above the dark center of the country at 1:17 a.m., when he opened his eyes and found something waiting for exactly that. 6 airports. 6 flights. 6 accounts from people who had no motive to fabricate and no framework adequate to hold what they experienced. A child who vanished from a locked corridor. A gate agent without a reflection. A voicemail recorded at 34,000 feet by a number that doesn't exist. A gate area that no map will confirm. A boarding pass issued 17 years after its passenger died. And a conversation in the silent center of a night flight, with something that called the quiet between sleeping and waking a window, and treated it as one. I keep returning to what the man on Kevin's flight said. Most flights have one. Most. Not all. Most. Which means that right now, on every overnight flight threading through the dark above you, the ones crossing the country, the ones crossing the ocean, the ones with full cabins of sleeping people trusting the pressurized dark with their unconscious bodies, something may be making use of that window. And the only thing keeping you from knowing about it is whether or not you happen to wake up in the middle of it. If this unsettled you, you're not alone.